All right, so we will get started and I will turn it over to Terica Green to get us started with our introductions.
Hi, my name is Terica Green. I am an electrical engineer over at Marathon Petroleum. I've been here for 2 years, graduated from Texas A&M back in 2018. My primary role here is to work with my area team. We're looking at some of my team, and I support the electrical and instrumentation sides of any projects. Brent?
Hi, my name is Brent Barron. I'm a civil engineering background major. I went to the University of Arkansas. I have been at Marathon for a little under 2 years, and before that I worked in a construction company that worked in refineries as well. I'm a project manager for small cap projects, and Terica invited me on this because actually all 4 of us are working together on a couple of projects out there now.
Hello everyone, my name is Peter Wynn. I'm a process engineer at Marathon Petroleum, so chemical engineer by background. I graduated from the University of Houston in 2011. I've been at Marathon for almost 2 years, and prior to that I worked for 3.5 years at a chemical company in Port Arthur named Huntsman, and it's now actually Indorama. I guess at Marathon, my duties is to take care of my units from a process engineering background, and then work with the area team like Brent and Terica on projects where you need chemical engineering support, and then just provide support where needed.
Oh, I can't hear you. Are you a 409 number? Yes, okay, let me move you over. Okay. Tried to unmute.
How about now?
Okay, yes, all right. You're good.
Perfect, okay, yep, sorry about that. My Zoom on my audio device is not working. But hey everyone, my name is Holly Fitch. So I'm also a chemical engineer, graduated with Terica from Texas A&M, class of 2018. And I've been working at Marathon for just about 2.5 years. I'm in the process controls role, so kind of in the same department as Peter, but we work as far as the control system, which kind of has more of a computer science and electrical engineering kind of tie-ins, as well as just your normal chemical engineering role. So definitely interesting, different spin on kind of what the process side looks like.
Great, well, thank you guys again for joining us this afternoon. Students, here's your chance. You can begin to submit your questions using the Q&A, the chat, or you can raise your hand. But to get us started, and panel in no particular order, nor do you have to answer every question, can you give us kind of a look into your day-to-day operations? And you can just feel free to unmute and take it away whenever you want.
There it is. Yeah, so like we all said, we all work on the same team. So at our refinery, we're all broken out into different units, are broken out into different areas. So we're all responsible in different ways for our area. So, you know, every day we start off with a morning meeting just to check that, just so that the team can get updates on, you know, the health of our equipment, and get a heads up on any changes that we want to make. And from there, we kind of split off with our marching orders. Brent and I, we're more on the project side. So as long as, you know, the unit is healthy, we're more focused on upgrades and improving the unit. Peter kind of helps guide operations and ways to make more money and make decisions as far as process goes. And then Holly, like she said, she's more on the control side, and she works a lot with the troubleshooting side. So, but these guys can jump in and kind of fill more in on how their side works.
Yeah, so being on the project side, the mechanical side, I've got, I don't know, 15 projects roughly, and those projects are in different phases. So we've got a phase from the conceptual phase, which starts with usually with someone like Peter, who will have an idea, and he'll put his idea on paper, and hopefully it gets approved as a project. Once it comes through that route, we call it the project review process. Then it'll come to me, and then I'll take that idea and we'll analyze it, estimate the cost, look at what the return is going to be, and then ultimately, hopefully, we'll implement it, construct it, and then we will at the end we'll close out that project, hopefully with positive impact to the refinery. So that's one part of my job. And like I said, I got 15 projects going on right now on various levels. I actually have one that's executing in the field right now. So I've been outside quite a bit the last few days. Another component of the job for me is we do a lot of management of change. So what that is anytime we want to make a change out in the field, we have a process that's for process safety reasons that we have to follow, and it can be pretty time consuming, and it can start from the smallest changes to working with Holly. I've got one right now where we had to do a change recently to add an alarm, so that if we have an issue with pressure exceeding or dropping below the pressure of something else, in this case steam, then we have to alert the operations team to go out there and shut that steam down. But anyway, other than that, I mean, we do some other items. We'll assist in a turnaround, which is a shutdown essentially, and then also we do a little bit with process hazard analysis, and what that is we sit down as a group for a series of weeks, and we try and envision worst case scenarios. So we'll follow a line through the entire refinery and just look at what are the worst case scenarios that can happen here, realistic worst case scenarios that can happen here, and we'll try and make sure that we have all of the safeguards in place. So that's a pretty good rundown of what I do.
I guess I'll go now. So I realized I said graduated in 2011. It's actually 2016. That was my high school graduation. I'm not that old. So just wanted to correct that. But as far as my typical day goes, like Terica said, we have a morning meeting where we kind of meet with the area team and just discuss the current operation, if there's any outstanding issues. And after that meeting's over, really, the beauty about process engineering is you don't really have any typical day. Every day is a little bit different. So usually if there's deadlines or something, whether it's helping Brent with the project deadline or something that's needed or that my support's needed, I'll take care of those pressing issues. If the unit's crashing and burning, I'll provide support to try to figure out what's happening. But outside of the really important issues at that point, really it's just my job to see where we can generate value. And by value, the easiest definition of value is just, hey, where can we make more money? But also if there's safety improvements, if we're trying to make the outside operations safer for the guys that are working outside, there's value there. But I mean, honestly, that's the good thing about engineering. It's like there's so many different opportunities everywhere. Even though these units have been running for 20 plus years, me just putting a different eye on it, I could maybe identify stuff, or if Holly sees something, it's just working to create value, and every day is a little bit different. So that's the benefit of process engineering.
Yeah, so I'll wrap this up. As far as process controls, sometimes you'll hear the term automation engineer, which can also be the process controls role, which essentially just means that a lot of what we're doing is automating what a human interaction, like an operator or someone else, would be doing with the process as it's online. So if, for example, we need to open a valve or shut off a pump, those are things that we can logically automate as far as our instrumentation and controls go. So generally it's using those in terms of safety systems. So if we have, critical conditions that we need to alert the operators of, we'll either use alarms or we can just trip things off instead. And then also we can use the automation to mimic what operators do in terms of optimization. So if we're making the right products for the day, making sure that, we're running things to maximum potential and trying to get the best value out of it while not exceeding any sort of safety limits or any sort of environmental limits. So it kind of has a lot of, we in process controls, we use a lot of parts from the project group and from the engineering group and from tech service just across the board. It's a lot of interaction with all the different teams. And so just like everyone else has said, we really have a tie with just about every other department and every other specification for engineers and not even engineers, just general operators and other support.
I feel like a 2012-11 college graduation wasn't that, I don't feel that old. So so we had this, okay, well, I'll jump to that question next. What are you in the role that you kind of envisioned yourself? So we have high school seniors, they'll be high school seniors. And so through our program, they've kind of been classified into different industries in which they're interested in: chemical engineering, electrical engineering, business. I think we had about 15. And they're learning about different careers that can be involved in that, working on different projects and learning about different things. And not that they're picking this and that's where they have to go, but it's kind of where they envision themselves. Are you in the role that you had envisioned yourselves when you were graduating high school and entering into your first few years of college?
Well, I'm definitely not. I actually didn't realize that electrical engineers could work at refineries until I went to my first career fair my sophomore year. Up until that point, being an electrical engineer usually meant, going into tech, which I don't know. Personally, I'm kind of glad that I stumbled upon this because kind of what Peter and everyone will always say, nothing's ever the same. Every day is different. So I think for me, this is a very exciting path that I had the opportunity to kind of get pulled into.
Yeah, for me, I did graduate college in 2011. I'm not old. So anyway, no, in high school, I always wanted to be an engineer since as long as I can remember. But when I graduated in 2011, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities for civil engineers. So I moved to Chicago just on a whim and started working in a restaurant. And then I got a call from somebody who worked for a refining construction company, and they offered me a lot of money. So I was like, sure, I'll be down there. And so I did that for several years. And actually, I really enjoyed that work quite a bit. It was a lot of field work, a lot of involvement, management. I was, managing up to 150 people a day, stuff like that. So that was really exciting work. And then coming down here to Marathon is a different side of it. So it's a much more technical side of it. So I've got the field experience, and now learning the technical side of it has been really valuable since then. So yeah, I mean, like Terica said, I was actually just thinking this yesterday when I was doing a walk down in the unit. I mean, you're out there, it's just pure engineering. So you're looking around, there's pipe, there's 800-degree material running through it. There's electrical items, there's heat exchangers. It's everything is designed for a specific purpose. So it's a really, really cool environment to be around in, and I wish everybody could experience it.
I didn't mean to offend everyone by a 2011 graduation date, but I guess it's really not that old. But to answer the question, I am not in the role that I had envisioned back when I graduated high school. Originally going to college, I wanted to be a physical therapist. Went to college my freshman year, did pretty well in my math and science classes. And so I kind of wanted to do something a little bit more technical. I also saw that physical therapists didn't make as much money as I thought it would. So I kind of just chose engineering on a whim. And yeah, and how I landed on chemical engineering was kind of funny. So I was in the engineering college, went to my first career fair, and at career fairs they have all these little tables and they show, you know, what positions they want. And I kind of saw chemical engineering just pop up everywhere. Originally I wanted to do biomedical because it kind of dealt with healthcare, which I was pretty interested in, but you know, unfortunately biomedical engineering just wasn't in big demand at that time. So I actually switched to chemical engineering, went to a little career website online and saw how much chemical engineering make. And, you know, several years later, that's how I ended up where I'm at. And even with chemical engineering, I kind of had doubts, but after I did my first internship and learned a little bit more about what we do and actually did it myself, that's kind of when I was like, hey, this is pretty fun, make a decent amount of money, and you know, every day is not really boring. So that's kind of my story. I wish I could give you that great answer that hey, coming out of high school, it was my dream to be an engineer, but that definitely was not the case for me.
And I think that's kind of encouraging too, right? Is that what you set out to initially do can change, and that, you know, you're not set in one way just as soon as you graduate college or just as soon as you enter college, even. So it can change, and it's pretty easy and doesn't take too much headache. You may spend more time in college, but if it's worth it and you end up where you want, then I think that's even better. Just saying, so, you know, don't be headstrong going into your college career. But anyways, I knew I wanted to be a chemical engineer coming out of high school. And then once I got to college, I didn't quite know what to do with it. I'd grown up in Houston, so I'd known a lot of people that worked in the refineries and chemical business. So that intrigued me, and that was most of what you're kind of catered to going to a school like Texas A&M. And then from that, I kind of was expecting to be in the role that Peter's actually in, and I'll soon be transitioning to that role instead of more of a controls related one. But yeah, just to reiterate that, like, even within Marathon, people switch roles all the time. You know, there are different options for chemical engineers. You can go into more of like a business role that directs like the economics and the planning group, or like scheduling, where you're, you know, counting barrels and making sure that the products are all in line, and, you know, doing budgeting and stuff like that. So just kind of to show all the diversity that you can get into even once you pick your specific major.
Great, thank you guys. So we had this question come up on the last company panel that we had, and it was why did they choose that organization to work with? So I'm asking you, what is it about Marathon that is kind of lured you there or kept you there? Is it kind of the culture or the people? Kind of why, out of all the other oil and gas companies that make up our Houston, South Texas area, is why you chose Marathon? You don't have to give personal details, but like.
I guess I'll go. Yeah, what kind of lured me to Marathon? Or sorry, Tarek, you want to go? It's up to you.
Yeah, it's all you.
Okay. What kind of lured me to Marathon was, one, just trying to move back to Houston. So previously I worked in Port Arthur, but I'm born and raised from Houston. And if you ever been to Port Arthur, it's a little bit boring down there. So definitely want to move back to Houston, but with the right opportunity. And so kind of when I saw Marathon, so Marathon's one of the largest oil and gas companies in the US. And actually our specific site here in Galveston Bay is one of the largest refineries. I think it's the third largest or second. Forgot exactly which number it is, but with chemical engineering, you can either work in oil and gas or chemicals. And since I had already 3.5 years of experience in chemicals, I kind of wanted to see the other aspect of chemical engineering, which is oil and gas. So I figured Marathon's a pretty large company. And then once I actually got to learn about the company in my interview, that's kind of what drew me to this company.
So I got exposed to Marathon through internships. Um, I believe we have 17 refineries nationwide, something around there. Um, so part of the selling point for me was, you know, I could possibly start in Galveston here, and be close to my family because I did grow up in the Houston area, but also I could one day move and stay within the same company. So I did 2 internships with Marathon. I went out to Detroit for a semester, and then I spent a summer at our Garyville site, which is like right between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, out in Louisiana. And I really liked the culture. I also had the opportunity to intern with other companies, so I could kind of compare what I was dealing with. And I definitely believe that I made the right decision because of how the culture is here. Another draw while I was at the career fair in college, walking around trying to figure out where I was going to intern, I got really excited because there's not a lot of electrical engineer women. And one of the ladies at the Marathon booth, she was an electrical engineer. So that also played a role in drawing me to at least give Marathon a chance. And then when I got here, I really liked it. So, and they apparently liked me because they pulled me over full time. So.
Yeah, so for me, it was about money and stability. So where I was bouncing back and forth between Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. And if you've never been to Minneapolis, it's freezing in the winter. But I mean, I got a substantial raise to come here. The benefits are better. There's no state income taxes here. And then the stability part is, going back and forth between, actually it was like 4 states all the time. I mean, I spent 600 days in a hotel over 6 years. So it was a lot of on the road. And down here, I own a house. I have a child and a girlfriend, and it's just a pool in the backyard. So it's kind of nice to kind of settle down a little bit. But now that I've been here a little longer, it's more about the culture of Marathon. So, I mean, I don't know how other companies are, but from what I've heard, working for some companies that are based in Europe is a really difficult place to work for a lot of times, just based on the words I've heard from other people. And I don't experience that here at Marathon at all. I mean, my supervisor is great. We have plenty of vacation, as I mentioned, the benefits, 401k matches, stuff like that. So there's not a whole lot of getting yelled at either, which is good. Other places like to yell at people. So, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, kind of going back to the career fair, I think Marathon had one of the shorter lines, and that's not any indication of who they are as a company. That was just not many people knew about Marathon in Texas. When you're showing up with Shell and Chevron, Exxon, and those kind of companies. So I think they just had a shorter line at career fair, and so I walked up and talked to them some more. And then they were just my first offer. But what kept me around was definitely the culture. And I'll talk more about speak more to like the people side. So just the people that I met on my internship seemed just cream of the crop engineers, from all across the nation. And then just the full-time employees, even as an intern, treat you as if you're full-time. They give you real-life applications. You have an immediate impact on the company once you start your internship. So for example, I did a project that ended up gaining a couple $1 million for the company. So just having that kind of that hands-on and that immediate responsibility, but also immediate sense of proof, or that that I could prove myself and experience what the actual workforce was really exciting to me. And then the people as well are just very encouraging. You hardly ever meet someone that turns you away for asking a question. Everyone really wants to just help you out and make sure that you're on the right track. And we're working together as a team. Kind of like we've said, we all kind of have a hand in some similar things, and so we want to make sure that what's good for one of us is good for all of us, and we're all driving together to the same goal. And you really feel that, I think, at Marathon. Just the people, I think, they always say, at Marathon, the people are the biggest asset, and I think that's really true.
Great, thank you guys. So what has been something that you guys have encountered that within your role that you maybe didn't expect, or I'll just leave it there. Something that you didn't expect that you've had to learn or go through, or something like that.
For me, the process as a project engineer, super slow. So I wanted, I was used to a fast-paced environment where basically twice a year we'd shut down the plant. You'd be working, 80 hours a week, which sounds terrible, but I don't know, I enjoyed it. So, and in between those periods, you would be working, planning for that event. So, and then the other thing was 410 schedule, which I don't have a 410 schedule here, but so it's really, I guess the one disappointing thing for me is just how slow the process is for projects. That's something I definitely didn't anticipate.
So for me, as my role was becoming more and more focused on instrumentation, transmitter, stuff like that, I didn't expect coming out of college that I would have to learn so much about the process just so that I can understand what type of equipment I needed for certain situations. So my boss gets on me all the time. He's like, what's the process? I have to know the temperature. How does a certain thing, a certain process call for a certain technology? So as time goes on, I'm starting to become more familiar with the chemical side so that I can be good at the electrical instrumentation side. So there's a lot of crossover between our roles, which I think is cool. And that crossover will actually help me. Like one day I want to be a process controls engineer and do what Holly's doing now. So that exposure to that chemical side will allow me to, will better equip me for when I eventually go over to that side. Another thing that I didn't expect, right now there's a shortage of electrical engineers. So I'm kind of unofficially wearing two hats as opposed to just focusing on projects and focusing on upgrades. I'm getting my hands a lot dirtier with the maintenance side and working with troubleshooting, making sure that, what out there runs and figuring out why it stopped running if that's what happened. So that's kind of where I'm starting to get more familiar with my technical side when it comes to electrical engineering, because you got to kind of be on your P's and Q's when you're doing stuff like that.
Something that I didn't expect going in or out of college. So it's not company specific, but for a process engineer, we have to do what we call turnarounds. So basically, there's problems develop over the years, and to fix them, you basically have to shut down the whole unit because you can't fix them while the unit's live. So what happens is during these turnarounds, we're basically working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And I definitely never thought I'd be working uh, all day, every day coming out of college. So that definitely was unexpected. But, you know, when you do these turnarounds, so my longest one that I've done was 4 months long. And while it seems really bad, the days just kind of fly by. And then one of the motivators that gets you through the day is that, you know, by law, once you're working over 40 hours a week, you get overtime pay. So when you see that nice turnaround paycheck after 2 weeks, it's like triple what your normal paycheck is. It makes it a little bit sweeter. Another unexpected aspect that I found out is just how valuable, you know, people skills are. Really relates to all disciplines, but especially for a process engineer. So, you know, we're not allowed to go out in the unit and turn valves. That's where our team comes into play. We have what we call operators who are basically in charge of, you know, turning valves, making sure the unit runs. They're allowed to touch stuff off out in the field, and you know, oftentimes I work with these operators because I need them to either troubleshoot or optimize something. So it's really important that you develop a relationship with these people. And usually, if you're not a nice person or you're really mean to them, they're not as agreeable to help you out. And so it's really important to just develop those relationships. And you know, before I even started working, I never really knew how valuable that skill is.
Peter kind of stole mine, so I'll pick a different aspect of the turnaround work, or even just day-to-day stuff. I didn't realize how physical the work could be for chemical engineering. So if you have, you know, we have towers that are 200, 300 feet tall, and so sometimes you have to get to the top of them, and either if you're down for a turnaround and the unit is shut down, so your vessels are empty, that's the time that you go inside and inspect them. So you're climbing into, you know, what can be very small spaces where it's dark on the inside, and you know, you're wearing all of your personal protective gear and making sure that you're safe as well. So it can be, you know, climbing ladders, up in high places, crawling through tight spots, which is exciting for one part, and then just you know, getting to put your hands on stuff. And like see it in real life instead of just on a paper or on a computer screen. I wasn't anticipating that, and I think that's really exciting.
Thank you, guys. One of the things, and Terry, you kind of spoke to this whenever we did our electrical engineering panel, one of the things that we talk about is the importance of the networking and the relationships and the mentors and people along the way that act as cheerleaders or sounding boards or kind of people that you can go to bounce ideas off of. And just wanted to see if you guys had anybody along the way that acted kind of as mentors or professors that really were supportive. And if you did, kind of how you came across building that relationship with them.
Sure, I can start this one. So when it actually was more of a coincidence, but when I actually interviewed with Marathon, the same woman that interviewed me ended up being my supervisor when I started my role. And so when you start as an intern, you get both a mentor and a supervisor. And the mentor could be someone like one of us that, you know, just recently graduated college in the past 5 years or so. Oftentimes they're just trying to figure it out just as much as you are, but have just a little bit more experience of how things work. And so you're automatically given a mentor, and then you're usually hired on with about 3 or 4 other interns in your group. For electrical engineering, I think they're a little bit smaller. but as far as like at least the chemical engineers, there's usually about 5 or 6 of you at a time. You can definitely lean on each other. You can lean on their mentors. You can lean on the other engineers that are in the units that you're assigned to support. So you kind of gain some artificially. But as far as like even the people that you meet at career fair, like you could be, if I'm one example of it, you could be working with them full time as well. And so I think just keeping in contact with them, and then like I said, people are always willing to just help you with any questions you have. So feel free to just reach out, and it could be the most unexpected person, but they could end up being kind of like your mentor or your support unit.
Yeah, and I kind of touched on this during the electrical engineering panel, but like I said, they officially can assign you mentors, but anyone can be your mentor, both, in your own, like in my case, I have 2 people that in the electrical engineering department that I harass constantly with questions, not just about how to do my job, but also, how to be an adult sometimes. But I also have a mentor in the department that I one day want to work in. And it's not uncommon for this mentor in specific to kind of bring my name up in beneficial situations or call me in to his office to teach me something that actually has nothing to do with my job currently, but he knows where I want to go. So he tries to give me a leg up so I can maybe be a little bit more prepared and have a better understanding of what I'm one day asking to do. So anyone can be a mentor. Anyone can be be a cheerleader. Holly's one of my cheerleaders. So making good connections with people will get you really far and will make your day a lot easier.
Yeah, I think Holly and Terica kind of touched on everything really. I don't think anyone ever really specifically designates a mentor. You just kind of happen upon really helpful people along your career. And like I said, it's all about just fostering those relationships with people. And I mean, the importance of networking is you may not see it initially, but you just never know if you make a good impression with someone and eventually they move up higher up in their career, they still have you in the back of their mind. You never know, that may present future opportunities for you.
Yeah, I would add to that. The only thing, they've kind of said it without saying it, but like, stay open-minded. I've had mentors that were, 80 years old. I had a safety guy that worked for me, and he could tell you more about a refinery than any of us could, I guarantee, because he's been in a refinery for 50 years pretty much. And I had an old boss. He was a 35-year Boilermaker, so he knew everything about welding that you could possibly know, which is a key component to what we do out here, especially from a project side. So yeah, I would just say stay open-minded when it comes to who your mentors could be in the future, and don't ever dismiss anybody. I mean, those operators out there, they're working their ass off every day, for their family, but they have a lot of knowledge too. So utilize every resource you can, in whatever field you end up going to.
Great, thank you. So the next question I wanted to ask was, how do you, well, we'll get to that one next. What are some groups or clubs or associations or something that you recommend our students maybe try to seek out and get involved with in their college years to around the field, your industry?
I mean, there's tons of engineering groups that are active. So Society of Women Engineers, National Society of Black Engineers, Hispanic Engineers. We have, I can't remember off the top of my head, but usually each discipline will there's actually engineer fraternities that you can join as well. So I mean, there's tons of groups out there, and they all can do different things. So I know there was through the National Society of Black Engineers, we used to have different focus groups within that group, and some of us were involved in robotics. Some of them were involved in testing out or helping create the latest and greatest body scans for as far as the biomedical engineers. So within these groups, usually they have even more focused in activities that you can kind of get your hands dirty with before you start doing internships, and kind of give you an idea of whether or not your major or the industry that you're looking at is the one for you.
I'll go next.
I would.
So I was part of the. Oh, sorry, Brent.
There, you're fine. Go ahead.
So I was part of the Society for Women Engineers. So I was involved in that, as well as AICHE, which is the Chemical Engineering American Institute for Chemical Engineers. And so I think both of those were really good at developing you both professionally and just as an individual. And we, at least I help with recruiting with Marathon. And so I think we kind of target those organizations as far as just doing like company introductions, just kind of getting you familiar with who we are as a company, but also getting to know each of the students in those groups. And so I think that's a good way to start getting just feelers out for like what kind of industries there are that you can reach through your profession.
Yeah, I was also going to say too, I know at Arkansas back in the day, they had like design teams that were volunteers. So I think we did like a concrete canoe type of competition. But, I'd also look outside the school too. There's all kinds of different opportunities outside of school for, innovation conferences, especially in a large area like this, I know. And you can really learn a lot of things. I've been to a couple actually myself, and you learn a lot of things about what's going on in the industry and even related industries. And you can just kind of see the future. And then the other thing is too, get involved in sports, because you don't always want to be in the books and always thinking engineering. You gotta be able to relax a little bit too.
Yeah, I was going to mention what Brent said, but, outside of professional organizations, college is a time to find yourself, but also meet new people. So it's good to balance that with other associations. So I was a part of, ironically, I'm Vietnamese, but the bigger organization at U of H is the Filipino Student Association, which at least 80% of that organization is actually Vietnamese for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, through that organization, I got to play intramural sports and meet a lot of new people. So that still helps you in the future as well, because it's just networking. And so just look and see what interests you have. I'm sure once you go to college, you'll find out there's a bajillion different things you can do and join. So it's really just pick anyone and figure out what you like.
And I'll chime in again real quick. The best piece of advice that I got entering into college was to join 3 organizations at the minimum. So one that develops you professionally, one that is either like a hobby or a passion, and then one that you'll never have the opportunity to try again. So it could be the most outlandish thing that just totally doesn't fit your personality, but just give it a try.
What was that for you? If you don't mind me asking,
So
because you kind of put
I
it out
briefly
there.
tried. I briefly tried the rock climbing team and figured that I don't have the physical ability for that.
That's fair. That's fair. Thanks. So in what ways do you think your fields may change in kind of that 5 to 7 years for when our students are entering into the career world?
So I can start on that one. I would say come prepared for change. So the way we've been doing things for the last 150 years is going to change drastically over the next 30. And we're in a transition phase right now, actually, where we have a sustainability metric in our built into our bonus, actually, technically, but more than that, it's a goal to reduce our carbon emissions by 30% by 30% by 2030, I think. So with that comes, like Peter mentioned earlier, like a different set of eyes. You're new, you're coming in the next 5-7 years. Come with fresh ideas that could help us find ways to keep this industry going, because the oil industry isn't going to go away in the next 30 years, but it'll definitely shrink a little bit, I think, and the goal is to just prolong that as long as it's reasonable, and we're not destroying the environment any further. So being innovative and coming with fresh ideas that we don't have. I mean, 30 years ago you didn't even hear of ethanol, and now it's the most talked about thing around presidential elections. So just be open-minded and be prepared to change with the times.
I think, at least from the electrical standpoint, one of the things that I see happening is a lot more tech in the field to automate as many processes as possible. Not only because operators cost money, but it's also the more that we automate, the fewer people that we have to worry about in the field, right? It's coming from a safety point as well. So over the last year or so, the majority of the projects that I've led were actually safety oriented. I think, whenever there's an incident where people get hurt, the entire industry starts looking at what can we do better to protect the guys out on the field. So a big part of that is going to be automation wherever possible to engineer our way out of unnecessary, unsafe situations. So we're still going to need electrical engineers. We already desperately need it.
Yeah, I think from a process engineering standpoint, in the next 5 to 7 years, I think what I see changing is, and it's already happening really, if you compare like when I came into industry versus someone that came into industry like 20 years ago, I think there's been a growing demand for skills that you don't really learn specifically in your engineering courses. So what I mean by that is, if you know how to program, or you develop, really good Excel skills, I think that's really valuable, because while it's not explicitly stated in the job title, having those skills makes you more marketable. And there's been a growing demand for people that know those skills, just because if you can automate stuff, whether it be on your day-to-day tasks, it just makes you more efficient. And then really, even in Holly's field with process control, it's not programming like computer programmers do, but knowing the basic skills of how to program helps you in that type of role as well. So when you're in college, just try to pick up on those technical skills if you don't already, and even if there's a club or something, you can just learn that, and maybe you'll find a new career path too.
And then just speaking more to like the environmental side. So even right now, all the engineers, especially people like Peter and stuff, we're trying to find ways. Hey, how can we reduce our water usage? How can we, reduce energy consumption? Where are the best places we can optimize? And so just making sure that we keep driving towards those goals. So like Barron said, that we can keep, or Brent said, sorry, that we can keep the industry alive, but make it just safer, cleaner, more efficient, I think is definitely the direction that it's headed in, because it's definitely not going away, but it'll change in how it's done, just to be more, clean overall and just better optimized.
Thank you, guys. What would you say has been your greatest accomplishment thus far? And that can be within your current role or other areas.
Man, is this an interview? My greatest accomplishment to date. That's a tough question. I'll let someone else answer first. I gotta think about it a little bit.
Sorry, it's just my list of questions, so I just try to get in as many as I can.
I think for me, the greatest accomplishment has been without getting too specific, just like how much I can learn. Like it seems like not every day, but every week, every month for sure, I'm learning something new about the process or something new about pumps or welding or something. So like, I guess a great example was when I was a project manager for for a construction company. So I was in charge of managing all the people, the budget. It wasn't so much a technical side, but there was a lot of technical aspects to it. But I was working basically 16 hours a day for 6 weeks. It was pretty rough, but once we got through that turnaround and we basically fixed a tower that was falling apart, a crew tower that was falling apart, it at the back end, you're like, oh wow, that was really cool. We brought together like 300 people, from the CEO of a company that we were doing the work for, all the way down to the laborers, and to see that happen in real time, because we didn't plan it that way. It was discovery work. So to see that happen in real time and be an integral part of it, where I was in those big time meetings, was pretty cool.
All right, I got my accomplishment now. My biggest accomplishment wasn't at this company, it was at my previous company, but essentially we had a problem that kind of just showed up out of the blue, where we had a 40-year piece of equipment basically fail on us. And basically I had to redesign a piece of equipment and basically push it through the whole project cycle in about 4 months. If we didn't meet that deadline, basically we would have shut down half the plant. And what's cool about that was, like Brent said, projects take a long time, but for me, I was the lead design on that project. And then because it was kind of out of the blue, we didn't have a traditional project manager like Brent is at our company. So it kind of wore several hats, learned a lot about construction, and even learned a lot about codes for steel work that I just don't learn in school and I never really cared about. The other cool part about that project was, while it was really stressful because we were trying to meet that 4-hour timeline. The 4-month timeline. What I learned about myself during that time was a little bit of stress is kind of fun, makes you work a little bit harder, and keeps you on your toes. And I don't know, it was kind of like each day as you accomplish stuff, it was almost like a little adrenaline rush. And, when it really got down to the wire, that's when it really got fun. I was going out in the field, checking, making sure the construction was going as planned, and then we'd find little problems here and there, and then just trying to solve these problems on the fly was actually really fun.
Yeah, I would have to say my biggest accomplishment was a couple months ago, when we finally finished installing these huge horns out in our tank farm. The job itself wasn't complicated, but it was over here, because there's so much going on, different needs and priorities happen. It's very rare for my group to see a project from beginning to end. You'll get to a certain point in or to a certain phase, and you hand it off to someone else. But this project I got when I very first started 2 years ago in the conceptual phase. I got to design it, and finally I got to implement and finish construction. And I kind of had a full circle moment, because I remember kind of being intimidated when I first got this project, when I first began, because I mean, college can't teach you everything. So understanding that I knew not understanding that I had a lot to learn at the beginning of that project. And then when it was finally ready to go and we cut the ribbon and everyone high-fived, I realized just how much further along in my understanding of my job I was. It was just a cool moment in being able to recognize how far I'd come and how smoothly the construction had gone, versus back when I first started, how chaotic construction used to be for me. So I'd probably put that in at least my top 5.
So mine would probably be a project that the project that I referenced that I did as an intern. So it was my 3rd internship with Marathon, and basically we took one of the crude units, so the very first of the process kind of that occurs in the refinery. It's just a separation unit. You're just trying to take a barrel of crude oil and distribute it into all the different products that you can make from that. But essentially, we make money by the number of barrels of oil that we bring in. And so the project just revamped how much we could shove through the unit. And so we were able to add a couple thousand more barrels to the unit. And that project was worth $10 million. And so we did the test for it, evaluated that we had all the safety requirements and that we weren't going to, run into any bottlenecks and make sure that we'd removed all the constraints that would basically keep us from targeting this new goal of a higher rate through the unit. And so we tested it, and then I submitted my final work was submitting recommendations as far as what we need to do just to get there, and then returning as a full-time and seeing that implemented, and then just seeing us realize the full value of that project. I think that was probably the coolest moment.
Great, thank you guys for sharing. Okay, I've got a couple more questions. Students, if you have any questions, now is your chance to submit those. If you could tell our students to develop one transferable skill to help them, what would you recommend that be?
Learning how to effectively communicate, that is the key to whatever you choose to do, whatever job, major, industry, whatever you do, odds are you're going to have to work with a team. Odds are you're not going to be just by yourself making decisions. So being able to effectively communicate what you're trying to do will get you far. I know for me specifically, when I'm working on a project, I don't get to make, process decisions, and even further than that, when I'm trying to push a project through, I'm not the one that gets to make a decision on whether or not this place is going to pay for that project. So being able to explain to my project team and my bosses, what I want to do, why, and how everyone will benefit from that is a huge part of my job, so that I can get the buy-in that I need so that I can move forward with my projects.
Yep, I 100% agree with that. Mentioned it before as well. It's just people skills. I mean, that includes communicating, being nice to people. As much as we like to be unbiased in the workplace and be professional and get things done, if you hate someone, probably not going to do the best job for them, or you're really going to delay that until the absolute end. So, really just being a good person to others helps you in so many ways, and that's not just engineering specific, that's across the board.
I would say kind of two things, which are a little more technology and math-y, but they're across multiple industries. And so that would be your Excel skills. Those are quite important and becoming more and more important as things are just automated. And then any sort of statistics that you can do. So my high school removed our statistics requirement, and then it wasn't in our curriculum for college, and I think I missed out on a lot of just very important skill sets there that aren't really rehashed, but are still important in your career. And I think that's not just oil and gas and not just engineering, but just kind of, across multiple different industries.
One I would say would be try and be creative, because if you have an idea that nobody's heard and you don't say it out loud, so that's where the communication part comes in. But if you don't say it out loud, then it may be a good idea, it may be a bad idea, but it should always be discussed. So be creative. I mean, I've found it's crazy how creative you can be in this job. Engineering seems like such a technical, thing that's been done 100 times, but there's all kinds of ways you can be creative. So yeah, that would be the one I would say.
Is there anything, trying to go with that, is there anything that you guys do to help continue to cultivate either the skills that you mentioned or maybe the technical skills as things change and evolve? Are there like certifications or trainings that you guys have to regularly do to keep up with the ever-changing atmosphere?
Yeah, so Marathon offers all kinds of continuous training skills. Not only, we have these things called CBTs, and those are like computer-based training. Those aren't what I'm talking about. Those are pretty rough to take. But we do have like technical training classes. We have managerial, supervisory training classes. There's training classes you can take within your discipline. For mechanical or engineering or I&E can do their own, or process engineers have their own. But you can also, on certain select items, you can kind of go outside that. So I was in one last week where it was about refining economics, and it was very heavily involved in the process side and the modeling side of it. So there's opportunity out there to, I do know of one example of a mechanical engineer who is a tech service engineer like Peter. So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities, and I think that's one of the best things about Marathon is they give you paths to go. I mean, there's a spider diagram for all the which ways you can go throughout the company, and so yeah.
I know for my group, the average age is about, or is in the mid-20s. So all of us are still learning as we go, and each project is a little bit different. So like Brent says, Marathon has several trainings that we're all required to go to, but it's not uncommon for, one of my coworkers he had this huge transformer project, but he never worked on a transformer. And yet he was going to be responsible for the successful implementation of this transformer. So because that's what his project needed, he went off and he got training specifically for that. We also, vendors, because it benefits them, they'll bring us little displays, and we have what we call lunch and learns. Either they'll supply lunch or we'll supply our own. And during that hour-long lunch, they'll go over this latest and greatest technology that they're trying to pitch to us, which both benefits them because now they're more likely to make a sell, and also it benefits us because now we've eaten and we know what's out there. So.
For my group specifically, or just within the controls team, similar to Terica, we'll have either lunch and learns or we'll have just designated training that our control system vendors supply. So we'll go take a week, in Austin, or sometimes they're in really cool places too, like South Carolina or something. And they teach you just very specific skills, or you can go just the basic training. But then within our group as a whole, prior to COVID, we're starting to get back to it. But we would do like just team trainings. We would pick a topic and we would study it together. Some of the more experienced people in the group would talk about how they've implemented those different strategies, or if they ran into this problem, how did they troubleshoot it, and how did they come up with a solution. So even within, it may not be like a formal training, but even within your teams, you're often just learning from other people through, how they've engineered a solution and how you can tailor that to a problem that you're working on, or any sort of issues that you have.
Yeah, I would say from my group, outside of what everyone just mentioned, so what's cool about working for big companies, just not Marathon, any company really, is they want to help grow their people. So, if there's anything you're interested in, there's several training classes outside of, your company that, if you find it, you just bring it up to your boss, and usually the company will be happy to pay for it. So, for example, one thing that interests me a lot is data science. So at my last company, found a training seminar. It cost a couple $100, which is pennies to the company. So they were able to ship me out, pay for my hotel, and then I was able to attend that seminar for free. So it's really up to your own curiosity of what you want to learn. Obviously, there are certain required trainings that the company provides, but really any big company will be happy to pay for any training course that you want to attend within reason. There are some trainings that are like overseas, which, people sometimes request and they do get denied unless it's really specific to your role. But, most small training courses, you can just pitch it to your boss and they'll pay for it.
Thank you, guys. All right, so we'll wrap with a question that I ask every panel, every podcast episode, whatever it is that we do. What is that one piece of advice you would go back and tell your high school self or early college self?
I would tell like my late high school, early college self to just remember to, as important as it is to, graduate and, get the job, make sure that you're having fun. I was definitely that very high strung kid. So focused on the future that sometimes I forget to be in the moment and have fun, so I know, sophomore year of college, I started becoming more involved in other groups, one of which was this group called Carpool, which essentially I just stayed out with my friends all night, driving people home around the College Station area, which was surprisingly fun. But having fun, making connections, that is a big part of, you know, being young and good for your mental health. So
Yeah, I was gonna say actually try harder because I didn't try that hard in college, but yeah, I think it's more balanced though. You know, I had a lot of fun in college and I still did well. I had a decent GPA, but I could have done better. Um, and so I think looking back, it's all about staying balanced and staying consistent in life. And, you know, if you start to feel yourself deviating and you feel yourself getting down on yourself, or you're developing anxiety, maybe it's time to take a break, step back and try and figure out what you're feeling. Because I think it's really important to be self-aware. Um, so yeah, just try and stay balanced and stay grounded.
I would say
Oh, go
that, I'm sorry, Peter. That we've kind of already touched on it, but basically the role that you pick or the discipline that you pick is definitely not set in stone. I think we're all kind of testaments to that, is that, you could set out in one direction and find that you really enjoy something an entirely different direction. And there's almost always the opportunity to go and try something new, go and do something new. You find a better company, you find, just a role that you never thought existed. And so just, yeah, be open, but don't feel so, confined by the role that you start out in, or whatever your degree says that you are. You can just branch out into multiple different paths.
Yeah, Holly kind of took mine too, but yeah, I would just go back and tell myself to be more open-minded. So I'm from the Sugarland area. We always said there's like a Sugarland bubble. So in high school, you think, everything's about grades, whatnot. And then you actually go to college and you learn and meet all these new people, learn new things, and you realize the world's much bigger than you expect. So kind of surprised me when I went out. You start learning more and more about yourself. So I think it's just important to tell yourself just, hey, even if you feel uncomfortable, if there's an opportunity to do something different, why not try it? And maybe you'll find something new about yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. We are coming up close to our time, and I want to make sure to get you guys back into your busy days for a midweek. We thank you guys for joining us. Students, I know we can't see you, but if you can help me thank our panel for joining us this afternoon. Thank you guys for taking time out of your day. Thank you, Terica, for helping to put this together, and for you guys just sharing your thoughts, your paths, the things that you guys have learned, and where you've got kind of shedding the vision of where you see your industries going, I think is really helpful for our students as they enter into their senior year and figure out what's next. So we appreciate you guys. Stick around. We're going to take a staged photo after, but I again just want to thank you guys, and we look forward to hopefully having you guys on future panels and getting to share more of your wisdom with more of our students. So students, at this time, thank you for joining us. If you haven't attended a skill building workshop, we have one more tomorrow morning. That's our resume workshop. You can register at that through our SIP landing page. So thank you guys again for joining us. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And we will take a picture now.